Hello everyone and welcome to His Author's Voice. I am the author Jack Sanger, and today's reading takes us to Canto 2 of Trial and Punishment, space epic poem. In Canto 1, you might remember, an alien spacecraft is moving towards Earth up one of the spiral arms of our galaxy. The species. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. Shakespeare. Humanity's self-styled third millennium had not regained the equilibrium it once had before the rise of norms of ownership, coinage, and cuneiform. It had endured a moral regression in contrast to its scientific progression, making knives to bombs atomic, dividing and conquering in chronic tension between good and evil, disintegrating through the visceral urges of the species, the us and them. The blood of battle was never stemmed, whether on streets or in imperial mayhem, and often in defence of some religion, fervent faiths that burgeoned on mystery and legend, furthered through conduits of lie and fraud, intent on spreading the word abroad. Sacred books followed to the letter, and rituals convincing them they were better than others who took oaths to different tracts, based on equally mythic facts. Humanity in ascendance promoted other forms of negligence, other blindnesses, other choices that compromised the planet's resources. Oxygen sucked from the air, the food chain cut without a care, for what would result? The natural and pure replaced by toxins, attracted by the lure of power, profit and personal gain, and attempts to halt them proved in vain, as their leaders, with God or weapon in hand, or both, spread visions that did not stand scrutiny. The people rarely had the wit to comprehend and act, to pit their many against the few. So servile silence prevailed, and they rued the plagues, the famines with millions dying, the fire, the floods, the constant denying of the cost of so-called progress. Instead, it was sold as the route to happiness. And so, in the conflict between the benign and malign, it was as if humanity craved a sign. Seth was the son of a Dalit actor and an Englishman, kutcher butcher to the racist mobs, Anglo-Asian in politer terms, schooled in law at the Sorbonne. A Paris graduate who returned home with fire for the campaign to eradicate castes, to extinguish the slur untouchable at last, and bestow freedoms that others knew. In some states, the right to wear shoes, drink water from the well, buy new clothes, free to walk and talk, to love and live, to ascend the height of any career, to be equal among their peers, to move from religious bigotry to an India that was politically open, democratic and free for every member of its citizenry. Being famous for his legal acuity, to a whole vibrant mass of humanity, a symbol, a leader, an example no less of what might result from a concerted press, a cumulative tsunami of Dalit support on the streets and in the courts. Zora was orphaned when a terrible storm took her family, destroyed their home while she was incubating, 2 weeks old, jaundiced, thin, but with a will to hold on to life, a resilient force, a tiny gold-brown bundle who made adults pause, set on a voyage until a point when she would be selected, anointed champion of the one route to sanity left to the failing race of humanity. But this fate was as yet unseen by young Zora. Unchallenged queen of the independent arts, singer, dancer, teller of tales, a true romancer, instilling hope among those that once cowered, a constant thorn in the white side of power. Politicians alarmed try to upend her, Bringing false charges of seditious intent, they wanted to silence her artistic voice, which persuaded the people that they had a choice in their futures, a better way, a better life, a world with no division or strife. Seth Smith and Zora Archambault had not yet met, and were unlikely to unless the mystery of synchrony might bring them into harmony. But there were connections between the pair, unseen threads that bound them, shared ideals, convictions consciously espoused, and more within their unconscious housed. They had the same nightmares and dreams. Whether steeped in symbols or ultra-real, their political views and social convictions were identical despite the depictions their separate cultures used to demonize those like them who sought to enfranchise everyone, educate and empower, as they worked for that future hour when new priorities would be learned, the planet saved, autocracy shunned, with its unflagging corrosive emphasis on consumerism and false hubris. Meanwhile, by their governments, both were deemed to be serious threats to their regimes. They were targets of the secret police as agitators among the populace, who'd put an end to the ruling class by leading uprising among the mass, such as marching to preserve nature via a return to reserves of wildness left to grow, inciting the populace to throw the dice of change, and through militancy end all social inequality, end the call to the nuclear asset as an answer to external threat, end thoughtless scientific advances with unintended tragic consequences, such as unfettered AI autonomy or experimental genetic surgery. For all these causes, unknowing and apart, Zora and Seth were led by the heart, she in the west and he in the east, both under threat but refusing to desist, about to undergo a great epiphany as their fates aligned in sympathy. "Listen, Smith, you are formally charged," said the man in the bomb-proof unmarked van, "with terrorism and sedition on the streets of Delhi. It is clear your mission is to overthrow the democratically elected government of India, so you will be kept in internment until such time as you will come to trial." He laughed when Seth voiced his denial and slammed shut the doors on him and others, peaceful marchers, sisters and brothers, exercising their democratic rights in a protest to protect all religious sites. The prison was overcrowded and smelling of spittle and feces and urine, all gelling in a glistening rink upon the floor. There were bloody scratch marks on the door, 5 to a cell, the guilty and innocents on filthy blankets. A descent to hell, with reprieve impossible, once you'd been marked as a political rebel. Wardens strutting, swinging their lathes, most recruited for their psychopathy. Simultaneously, in a New York raid, Zora was wakened as the police weighed in with a steel battering ram, taking her door off at the jam. Bullets then ricocheted off walls and ceiling. Helmets and visors rushed, and were soon kneeling on her negligéed body, prone on her bed. One clicked back his visor and said, "You're under arrest. We're taking you in, you black scum looter. You love the bin." White teeth and a white face in a twisted snarl. For Zora, the next hour was a nightmarish whirl. They'd watched her greedily as she dressed knickers on genitals, brassiere on breast, then cuffed and dragged her to their Mariah, using a hypodermic to pacify her. Her cell was Spartan, with nothing to use to hang herself from, nothing to abuse herself with. But Zora was not suicidal, nor would she fester there, stay idle, but preach her message among the inmates to help swell the opposition to the state. 1 month later, in weird harmony, Zora and Seth set up vigilance committees. From their illegal incarcerations, organised through underground communications, a liberation theology in prose and verse to release the strangle of autocracy's curse. Their efforts to mobilise remained undiscovered, nor guidance to the populace smothered. Marches, concerts and pacifist acts broadcasting alternatives to official facts. Individual protests of disobedience, believers and atheists, objectors of conscience, 2 continents in a dance of dissent, taking action against decades of torment. Each passed hard copy through the bars, with tame warders protecting the media stars in silent sympathy, supporting their fight against those that also denied them rights. Food was smuggled, paper and pens, clandestine visits from activist friends. A counter-offensive, an unseen army, fomenting among the silent majority. 2 great cultures within a shout of fresh rebellions brought about by separate catalysts who each found subtle ways to resist the heel of the oppressor's boot and build a mycelium of roots. Within a year they'd reached a stage where they must make the final gauge of when to press the incendiary button to set off simultaneous waves of action. A focused, committed mobilization to end oppression. Each debated into the night in conference calls to set their sights on the exact time to put in course the confluence of favourable forces, the perfect moment for a visual signal to ignite their followers in their vigil. They held up their phones for the world to see them giving the sign for mutiny. But instead of the expected televised drama, the pair vanished, leaving just 2 piles of garments. Well, there we have Canto 2 of Trial and Punishment. And we've moved our focus from the alien spacecraft to Earth itself, and 2 revolutionaries, Seth and Zora, Seth in India and Zora in New York. And we get a flavour of their politics, their revolutionary politics, and their desire for liberation of the masses. Shortly I'll be reading Canto 3. Until then, I wish you goodbye.